1979. Number 2, Side A. Author James Baldwin, interviewed by Joan Martin Burke of CBS News in New York on September 19th, 1979.
Just Above My Head, Mr. Baldwin, is the title of your new book. What does it mean?
The title comes from an old song. So old that I hardly remember. The song says, just above my head, I hear music in the air. Or it says, I see trouble in the air. But the song is, I really do believe there's a God somewhere. That comes out of my childhood. It's very...
Yeah, I thought it might mean it's just out of my grasp.
Well, it can mean that too. You know, black speech is difficult to, it's difficult to find. In this case, particularly, it's something which is old as much older than I am. You know, I simply grew up with it all my life and never had any occasion, to. I always seem to have known what it meant without having questioned what it meant. Because it does mean also that something is just beyond, out of your reach. That's why I really do believe there's a God somewhere. Right. You see what I mean?
No, I see what you mean. But after reading the book, which now, tell me if I'm right. It's a book about homosexuality and trying to.
Well,
you question that? Okay. What is it?
It's not really about homosexuality. I mean, Arthur's sexual orientation is homosexual, but so that's. No, it's not. It's a love story. It's a series of love stories. It's Hall and Ruth. It's Hall and Julia. It's Julia and Jimmy. It's Jimmy and Arthur. It's meant to be. Well, it has something to do with the life I come out of and the life that I.
That's too
can
confining.
bear witness
in other words.
To. Yeah. No. Exactly.
It's broader, much broader.
It's a book about a gospel singer, and the life and death of a gospel singer.
Yeah, but I thought it was really about the brother, too, trying to understand. That's what I mean.
Well,
trying to understand Arthur and putting all that into place.
Yeah, Hall's attempt to, after all, Hall is trying to deal with the fact that his brother is dead, and everyone has a terrible time, trying to accept that, so if someone you really love, in this case, your younger brother, is dead, you have to make a certain journey, before you can find any room for it inside you, before you can accept it. And the action of the book is really, primary action of the book is Hall's journey back into his past, back into their past, to recreate his brother in order finally to close his brother's eyes, if you see what I mean.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that comes through. That comes through. But I thought you were using the vehicle of homosexuality to take it out of the ordinary. Now, that may sound wild.
Well, no. To tell you the truth, I never thought about it in that way.
And you're the author. It's all right.
I'm thinking about it that way now. You see what I mean? It has a lot to do with the life of the church. It has a lot to do with the lives of gospel singers.
But it's deeply religious. Are blacks deeply religious people?
Well, blacks are religious in a sense that difficult to make real for people who think they're white. It's black people have another sense of a different sense of religion. It is in a sense much more. It's much less formal. It's much less distant. One talks about the true religion. And perhaps only a black person would know what to make of the song. Mahalia sings, I got to live the life I sing about in my song. Arthur says that too. Religion is organic. It's day to day. It's meant to control your conduct. It's meant to control, it's meant to enlarge your sense of reality, and our sense of each other, It is not something it's not something for Sunday.
It's intimate.
It's intimate. It is intimate and it is ultimately private. In spite of, in spite of the congregation and and the tremendous the ritual and the ceremony, but ultimately it's private, you know.
Interestingly, blacks and religion versus whites and religion.
Yeah.
One of the examples that was years ago when, in Korean War, I think, when blacks were captured and put into solitary, or brainwashed, as opposed to whites, blacks stood up better. And one of the reasons they said, whoever those gray people are, was because of his religion, which was which was part of his being, as opposed to like a Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. It's a resource, you know. It's what a black person means when he talks about the midnight hour, which is not just a popular song, you know. It comes out of that. Almost everything one thinks about in terms of black people, one way or another, comes out of the church. And the midnight hour is the hour when you wrestle with your demons, you wrestle with the angel, you know. And it implies a depth of solitude, of which most white Americans are terrified, and, you know, and simply cannot imagine it. In my experience, you know.
Solitude is terrifying. Well, maybe that's where even getting back to the brainwashing example.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it would not come to a black person with the same surprise. It is much harder to shock a black person out of reality, you know, much harder, and a black person goes mad. I've seen black people go mad. It's a matter of rage, you know, and as opposed to a matter of terror.
Is this black people in America?
Black people in America?
Black people anywhere?
Black people.
I mean,
I'm not really equipped to discuss black people elsewhere, but I've seen them.
After the American experience, let's.
After the American experience, yes, but I've seen it in Africa too. You know, there was something. I don't mean to be mystical about this either, but when I went to Africa, West Africa, the first thing that happened to me was two things. I went there with my sister. One of them was that I had been afraid that I would find it very strange. I didn't. It seemed very familiar. It seemed very. It seemed in some senses I'd been there all my life. I'm not trying to be romantic about this, but nothing I saw seemed alien to me. And the other thing, which is even stranger, I was afraid that the Africans would dismiss me as an American. But in fact, they never thought I was American. They never thought she was either. They told her, they told me, in a perfectly ordinary way, you know, as though they'd seen us only yesterday. You know, which tribe we came from, which tribes they thought we came from, and that was a great shock. It was, you know, it was as though we were home. You know, in spite of all of the strangeness of, you know, of the huts, the day-to-day life, but I never felt the strange from it. You know, I felt that something in me had been waiting there for me all that time.
Your book, I've read several other things that you've written, and this does not seem as angry. Maybe because it just doesn't. Does this mean that James Baldwin has changed?
Well, I hope I've changed. You know, I've been around for 30 years. You know.
Plus.
I've been on the earth for 55, so I'd like to think I changed to some extent.
Well, let me say less angry then.
I don't know if I'm less angry. That would imply there would be less to be angry about, and that's not true.
Okay.
Or that I have become indifferent, and that's not true. But I think that in time you have to learn how to control, you know, your anguish and your rage, and how to find a way to use it, you know, so that it won't destroy you. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And in that sense, I may seem to be less angry, but it's only because perhaps have become more determined.
But the cause of your anger has not diminished in any way. I mean, nothing has changed from everything that I've read anyway.
No. Nothing has changed, really.
Why?
It's impossible to say that nothing has changed.
We're still on a collision course. Whites and
But
blacks are still on a collision course.
whites are still afraid of blacks, and for the most part are unable to look on black people as people like themselves. And this shows in every single American institution, and it shows in the future until today that a black child, male or female, is facing, and the Republic refuses to take any real responsibility for. It's for their brothers and their sisters.
Okay, we all more or less come, say, theoretically, or let's make a hypothesis. We all come from someplace else, more or less, in this country.
Yes, of course.
I come from the Irish, some part of the Irish. You're black. In Ireland, there are things happening that are not, that people get violent about, and there's oppression and everything else, and there's oppression here. What's got to happen here? We can't blend. I mean, I'm saying this very badly. I realize what I mean. What I'm trying to say is, there any way for change to happen by becoming, instead of I retaining my Irish seeds and you retaining your black ones? There's no melting pot, melting that can happen. This blending, this. What blacks becoming white doesn't help.
No, it's not possible. That's a very heavy question.
Yeah, I know. It's very badly put, too.
No, but I understand it. But I think that it has something to do with the. You're right. Everyone in this country comes from someplace else, which they both cling to and repudiate. It's difficult to. They do both things at the same time. For example, in the case of, I know many Irish, for example, who dream of going back to Ireland one day to die, but not to live, What it has come to is that, well, an Irishman in Ireland is Irish, but here he's white. It's not the same thing, In a way, his whiteness is all that's left of his identity. And he can't surrender that, even though it's meaningless to be white, and no one in this country was white before they got here, But since white is a metaphor for safety, I have to remain black to prove that you're safe, and that's part of the collision course, if you see what I mean,
That's heavy.
It's part of the American. It's part of the American mythology. It's part of.
Okay, well then, I guess let's get down to sort of something that this is very philosophical.
Go ahead.
What is? I mean, we are on a collision course, and nothing has changed with the civil rights movement, with so-called women's liberation. In other words, nothing has changed. Why and what can we do to do that, or what has to be done to?
Well, what has to be done is to liberate institutions. I mean, all of the American institutions, all of them are racist institutions. Schools, for example. It's impossible really to for example, to resolve the school situation as long as blacks are considered to be third-class citizens, and it's impossible really to change the schools, without changing the cities. It is not a solution to bus children 30 or 40 or 20 miles, into other neighborhoods, because that doesn't change the future for the white kid, doesn't change the future for the black kid, and doesn't bring them any closer together. It only creates, it only deepens this kind of schizophrenia and distrust on both sides. Because after all, the white parents of these children do not want them with the black children, and everybody knows it, and especially the black child, and the black parents know very well that what the black child is forced to go through does not alter what is going to happen to him when he gets to be 16, 17 years old.
Which is
he's going to find himself unequipped for the society in which he lives, and at the very bottom of the labor market. That is the way it is, and no one has had the vision or the courage to begin to change it. You cannot begin to change the racial situation in this country without changing the institutions, and nobody is prepared to do that. Nobody knows how to begin to do that. What Americans always do is make token gestures, yet another civil rights bill or whatever, And all of these token advances are almost immediately nullified. If you think about the Supreme Court decision in 1954, which is 25 years ago, and all deliberate speed, a quarter of a century later, nothing has changed, which indicates the American people never intended to do that, and will never do it until they must.
And what will make them do it then? What is the must?
They will do it. They will do it at the point when they cannot do anything else. People, it's a terrible thing to say, but people do not give up things. Things are taken away from them. The longer you hold on to it, the worse it is when it goes. So there are going to be some terrible changes, which no one will be able to control, to define, or to foresee. Something awful happened to black people and to white people too when Martin was murdered. No one really faces the implications of that event. But it's a very, very, it's a time bomb. It's a long fuse.
That was a pivotal event for you, I know, in your life, from what I gather.
Mm-hmm.
And
not only for me.
I know, but let's go and
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by it was a pivotal event for this country, perhaps?
It was a pivotal event for this country, since a great many people, for example, who I did not entirely always agree with Martin, but it was impossible not to respect him, and whether one agreed with him or not, one wasn't compelled to agree with everything he said, but one understood the direction in which he was moving, and it was impossible to deny that or to obstruct it, And he was a very gentle man, after all. He was unlike Malcolm, whose death was another pivotal event. But in some sense, Malcolm's death could be taken as having some coherence, since he was a warrior. Martin was not. He was a real preacher. He meant what he said. Now, when that man got slaughtered, something happened to the morale of every black person in this country. I remember being with my brother in Chicago just after he died. And I remember in Chicago, when Martin first went to Chicago years before, they threw eggs at him and said, we don't want dreams, we need jobs. And Chicago was, hardly, a seat of nonviolent, students at all. Yet I remember this long, long street in Chicago, in the South Side, and walking along this street, which seemed endless, in every window, private house, a barber shop, or a grocery store, whatever, in every single window on both sides of the street, there was a photograph of Martin, which was a massive act of mourning. After that, it was impossible, it is impossible for the bulk of black people to believe in the good faith of white Americans. That is absolutely, that's the way that is, And white Americans, I don't know what they make of it. I don't think they know the depth of the grief,
No, probably.
I think they don't dare face it. But I know that something happened to their morale too, because in a sense Martin was also their hope.
For the majority of whites, yes.
Yes,
not for the ones that have.
Yeah, but for the majority. And that vacuum is still there, and it will be filled with something.
Well, what do you see then as the future of Americans, whether they're black or white? Because whoever's here is going to get caught in the crossfire.
I don't know. I think we are headed for a very rough period. To overstate it slightly, one could, if one were looking at it if I were not American and looking at it from the outside, which is not possible. But I would conclude that these people are very close to chaos, are trembling on the edge of civil war. It will be called a racial war. It will not be a racial war. We've been here together far too long, And the concept of race in this country really should be obsolete, But as long as it obtains, the tension will increase. And since, in fact, I am flesh of your flesh, one of your brothers, a co-citizen, it will not be a racial war, it will be a civil war. I would hope it doesn't come to that. But it will demand a miracle.
You say that there are no changes in the institutions, which is where the power is and the money and everything. But is it
And the identity.
Ah, identity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the bottom line. It is important.
American identity.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The American identity refuses to be black. Which is
Or even mixed.
Or even mixed. Which is absolutely, it's a symptom of insanity in a country where no one can prove he's white. We have been here together too long. We've cost each other too much.
I was going to say, maybe, is it possible to start, on a one-to-one, to have black and white?
Well, that's,
But
insofar as that's the way it's being done, insofar as it's being done at all. But that doesn't alter the force of the society. All it does is, in the present state of affairs, all it does is, if a white person really means it, in the eyes of the Republic, that person becomes black too. In the eyes of his boss, in the eyes of his neighbors, and in terms of his or her aspirations.
It's a no-win situation.
I'm afraid it is at the moment a no-win situation. I think that if white people took that risk, they could avert disaster. But they're not willing to take that risk.
It's happening all over the world, though. It's happening in South
Indeed,
Africa.
yes. Mm-hmm,
it's happening in Ireland.
Yes.
And, these are this is exactly what's happening.
All over. Well,
Nobody is willing to give up their power.
That's right.
To share with anybody else.
And this implicates the entire Western world, and it very probably dooms the Western world, because the future cannot be like the past. No one can afford it.
That's right. Absolutely. That's in every stretch, in every meaning of that word,
exactly.
afford.
Yeah, that's right.
You've written plays, screenplays, novels, commentaries, etc., etc. Which do you enjoy the most? Which has the most force for you?
It's impossible to answer that.
How do you get decide whether it's going to be a play or a novel?
Well, a play drops in my case anyway. Usually the thing drops into your mind complete with its form. Let's just say it's a short story. Sometimes what you think is a short story turns out to be a novel. But it never turns out to be an essay. An essay never turns out to be a play. The truth is, for me, every time I finish one of a short story or an essay or a play or a novel, I think to myself, wow, I'm never going to do that again.
Well, it's like giving birth.
Yeah, exactly. Once it's over,
you say, my God, glad it's over.
Yeah.
But then you see the child.
Yeah.
And you think it's worth it.
And you recover. But you go through a terrible postnatal depression. It's true.
No, it's absolutely true. It's true. So, what do you do next? And then
at the moment, I'm just sort of coasting.
You're living here now?
I'm living here now.
You're not. You're back from abroad.
Well,
that was a phase.
No. I'm not going to put it that way. I've been living in and out of the country for a long time, but I was based here from '57 to '69. And since '69, I left, put myself back together. I came back, and I've been more or less based here. I have a house in the south of France. The truth is, I find it very hard to write here, and because there are too many other things that I'm asked to do. And well, I'm a public figure in America, And it's very hard for a public figure to get any work done, to get any writing done. So, and you have to find a way to do it. It doesn't matter how which way it is, as long as you get the work done. So I have the house in South of France where my typewriter is, and I never bring my typewriter with me anymore because I know I'm not going to get any work done here. So I'm playing everything by ear. I'm kind of a transatlantic commuter, if you like.
That's nice.
Well, it's strenuous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.